Hello, welcome to Everyday Leaders Live Showcase for 2022. We are so excited to share stories of personal stories with you this year, face-to-face, not Zoom, live interviews. Today, we're at my friend Jodi Bondy's home, and we're going to talk to her about her life and her business and how really she's being an everyday leader in her life. So you may say, what are you wearing? That's not your everyday leader garb. It's not. This is how Jodi and I met. Playing hockey back in the late 90s. Ice hockey, yes, women's ice hockey existed in Indianapolis. So we're going to share with you kind of her journey, stories that she's doing now, and help you to become better business leaders and better people in your life. So Jodi, thank you for joining us on the showcase. Well, this is awesome this year.
Thank you for coming out and for us to get to see each other in person. We've had a few times, but we don't get to spend much time together anymore because our lives are so busy.
It's busy, isn't it? Yes. And so here's the first lesson. Sometimes you're in people's life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And sometimes it's everything, right? Mm-hmm. You reconnect, and that's what's happened with us. And I love it because you realize that those people are supposed to be connected on your journey. They just are. And so you're one of those people. I love celebrating you. I know you've come on Everyday Leaders in our group and you've talked about your business, but I really wanted to dive into the behind the scenes story because there's so much more to you and why you're doing what you're doing today.
Yeah. I never would have guessed this was where I was going to end up. It was not, if I had made a vision board when I was younger, this was not part of it.
Did they even have vision boards back then?
I'm not sure.
But so you started off as a teacher.
Well, actually before teaching.
Before teaching, yes. Take us back.
Yeah, so I had decided in 9th grade that I was going to be a wildlife biologist and live in Colorado. And so I was doing everything to get to that point, and then went to college in biology. And as I was getting into my junior year, I think my advisor said, only like the first 1 or 2 people in the class get into that program and go on to their masters and everything. I'm like, oh, well, that's not me. I mean, not that I wasn't smart, but I had other things I did in college. I was an RA, I was playing sports, I had all these other activities that, I didn't want to be that one focused, that nerd, science nerd. And so I did all this other stuff. So I kind of changed my major, but I changed my focus of my major. I did still major and graduate with a degree in biology, but my first job out of college was working at a bank, not biology at all.
See?
And then I did get a job working in a lab as a lab tech. But while I was at that company, then I branched off and I was an industrial engineer for a while. No engineering background. My husband was an engineer, so I guess, I don't know, maybe some of it rubbed off, but it wasn't until my kids were born and started to go on and I'm like, maybe I need to teach. Partly because when you have kids, you can't go out and do research. So I didn't get to do field research. I got stuck in the lab doing all this stuff because I couldn't travel. So I thought, well, maybe I'll teach. No, I don't want to teach. But then I thought back to when I was younger. My sister and I used to play school all the time, and I was always the teacher. And I actually graded the papers I gave her.
Oh my gosh.
So I think teaching was really my passion, but I wasn't being open to it. I was trying to drive the boat, and it wasn't my story. It was, but it wasn't. So I went into education, and I loved it. I loved teaching. I taught high school science, and I mean, yes, there were struggles, but there are students that I'm still in contact with, and stories that I've heard from them, how I impacted their lives that I probably didn't know. High school kids don't tell you that when you're in school. They tell you years later, and then you're like, oh, that's why I did that. But I got out of teaching as the environment and the community of education started to change. It wasn't about what I could help these students do anymore. It was about, can you take the test? Can you meet this benchmark? And I'm like, I don't want to hate the thing I love. So I left teaching and watched my grandson for a year and then was like, all right, what else can I do? So I just did some different things, odd jobs. Back when I was in high school even, I mean, I took an EMT class, and so for the last 44 years, I have been an EMT working on an ambulance.
Wait, 44 years?
Yes, 44 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I never went on. Everybody says, why didn't you go to be a paramedic? And I'm like, because I don't need to be. Basic EMT is where I need to be. Mm-hmm. And so I've done that in 3 different states, always on volunteer departments. And when I was away from that for a little bit too, it was part of my heart. And I felt like I really was missing something. So I went back and took the class again and everything. And so now I do still get to educate new EMTs. So even though I'm out of the formal K-12 education world, I am still teaching people. Mm-hmm. So, but when I was teaching, I dabbled in scrapbooking a little bit. I mean, I was not a huge scrapbooker. I mean, I liked recording things down, but it just wasn't, and a friend of mine says, hey, you should join me and, sell creative memories. And I'm like, I can't do that. No, I don't want to do that. Well, I did. So I did. And so that was kind of my side hustle. Mm-hmm. And then when I left and I was sitting around, so I was doing more scrapbooking and helping and teaching people. So I still got my teaching in there. But when they were starting to have some financial issues, I decided I need to figure something else out. And a lot of people went, oh, I don't scrapbook. And I'm like, but you have pictures. Well, then I found this organization at the time it was the Association of Personal Photo Organizers, mm-hmm. and I joined. And so for 9 years, I've been a part of that organization, now the photo managers, and I started my own business, and I've been teaching myself. Now, it's a lot of technology, a lot of science behind the photos and how they were made and things like that, so I am still getting my science geek on. Mm-hmm. It's just in a different way, but I'm also teaching people that their family memories are important. And so many of us, we've become such a disposable society that people just throw that stuff away. Well, when your older family members die, you can't get that back. And so now I'm trying to teach people how to get those things and make a legacy to pass on to their children and grandchildren.
I love that. You've helped me. We just had a situation where we were going through old family things, and we found a picture from the 1940s, I think it was, or 30s, that was in a flood. It was a recovered picture from a flood, and I called you and you said, I can help you. We can at least protect what it is, and you scanned it in and you sent me the repaired photo, the updated photo of like, oh my gosh, now you've recreated something that was my grandmother's great-grandmother. And I was just in shock that the generations that would have lost this had we have lost this deteriorating original photograph. Mm-hmm. And so actually you're going to watch some B-roll that Joe has of this, that we were in Starbucks and you were helping do your white glove treatment. So I love this because everything that you do is really to protect the legacy. And so when you think about that, you are teaching people, you're still doing that today of helping people say, hey, if there's something that you need to protect, learn, right? Learn what you can do with it next.
Right.
We don't think about it until we have to. It's like having that fire and going, gosh, I wish I would have gotten insurance.
Right.
Right? But it's the generations. It's being a servant in your family instead of selfish. Mm-hmm. Of all those pictures that are on your phone. I know you do all kinds of things like challenges of, hey, get rid of all those duplicates on your phone, processes to help people
right.
organize it, because it's a lot of data that we're keeping today. And you have beautiful family memories on your walls, and yet what happens if something happens to your home? And if those are important to you, the really special pictures that you have hanging in your home, what if nobody else has a copy of that? Mm-hmm. Right? And so that tells the story. Like, I remember my grandmother, she had albums and albums, and we would sit in her living room and we would go through them, but on the back of each picture she had a date. She had the people that were in it, and now that she's passed on, some of those fronts are scanned in and some of those are kept for us, but are the back of those memories captured?
Right.
And so that's what's important, right? Really documenting it properly so that everybody can understand it for years and years and generations. That's history. We can't cancel that out. That
right.
actually happened, right? And that gives us some purpose to where our family is. And again, like you said, what you're supposed to be doing in your life because you connect it to the things that matter.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and I look at it, and some people, I have very weird ways of connecting things. But I mean, being an EMT for so long, I mean, I'm helping and caring for other people. That's what I'm doing in my business too. Even though it's not involving medical and blood and guts kinds of things, it's still, I'm caring for people and I'm helping them to be protected. And so to me, that's part of my you know, underlying DNA, that I'm there to be able to help those people and to see that and to sometimes uncover it in ways that they don't necessarily understand.
Talk to me about your process of, I know you've got 3 girls and you've got all these grandkids and we've done so much together over the past few years, and so you have this other thing that you do too, which is this retreat house. Talk to me about when that became like part of your life and what your vision is for that and what that really means to you.
So, along with the whole scrapbooking world, you know, I would set up weekends to take my clients or my girls to be able to work on their scrapbooks. And we would go to hotels. We'd go down to Bradford Woods in Indiana that had a big house where you could get people. So it's just getting people together to work on their things. So it's a time of fellowship and a time of working and a time of just, you know, sharing some girl time. And so we would travel and do that, and I did it for many, many years, and working with other consultants as well, that we would go. And the last several years I had been going to a hotel down in Terre Haute, about an hour from here. All 3 of my girls went to Indiana State, so we were down in Terre Haute a lot. And so I started going to a hotel down there, and it's got to the point that Tim would have to take a day off work because I needed 2 cars to haul down the food, my stuff I was going to do, my store of my inventory, and get everything ready. So we'd take 2 cars, drive down there, unload, I'd set everything up, and then he'd come back on Sunday to help me come back. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I said, part of my dream was, I'm like, I want to have a retreat house. I want a place that I can do this, that I can leave all my stuff and I don't have to haul back and forth. So it had always been in the back of my head. You know, again, he's an engineer, so he doesn't always see things the way I do. So I would be looking and looking and looking. So for 3 years, I'd been looking at houses. We'd actually had put offers on and had inspections done on 2 other properties. And for whatever reason, big things fell through, big red flags came through, and so we didn't go through with them. And then I looked where one of the schools I used to teach at, I drove through this little town out west of here, and so I would see all these huge Victorian homes. And so once I went out there and looked, I mean, so much, so here's my science geek, is I would take graph paper and draw the size of twin beds and tables, and I'd move them around, I'd measure the rooms, and then I'd move those little pieces of paper around to see if it was going to work. And so this house had what I needed. I mean, it just was a perfect fit. And so I bought that house 9 years ago, and we closed on it in August, and I had my first retreat in September, so in a month. Wow. I had everything set up and ready to go. So it's a 130-year-old house, and I can have 13 people stay overnight, and they all have their own space, and we get together and we laugh and talk and cry, and you know, if the walls could talk about what happened in the first 120 years, probably not as much information as what they've got in the last 9 years. So it's just a great place to go and be with people. We've even had a couple weddings there. We've done other kinds of retreats and things. So it's just a good space to go and you know, be in a very intimate, quiet, fun place to gather with people that you want to spend time with.
That's so cool. And it's the Magnolia House.
Yeah, the Magnolia of Montgomery County.
Montgomery County.
So let me tell you a little about that. So, you know, trying to come up with names. My girls hate it because I'm always trying to come up with acronyms. So the house, when I bought it, the gal I bought it from, she had put window sticky stuff on some of the windows, and it's of magnolias. So, you know, I thought, all right, we'll try to figure something of that out. And it's in Montgomery County. So after I went through a bunch of really bad names that I threw out, I decided on the Magnolia of Montgomery County. Okay, then I got to thinking about this a little bit more. So here's where the history comes in. My mom and her family is from Mississippi. They were born in Montgomery County. Magnolia is the state flower of Mississippi. So really, without knowing it, the house has been named for my mom and her two sisters. And when my aunt died, I had gotten a couple of pictures of them when they were dressed up in those old Western type things. And so I actually have pictures of my aunts at the house to tie in where the name came from.
And Magnolia of Montgomery is mom.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome. And you rent this out to all kinds of people, like families that are coming through, bed and breakfast, people that want to go to Turkey Run and want a separate house space. So that's what's so neat about it. It's not just for scrapbooking or photo organizing. I've been helping you with some retreats that you've done here locally. And so I want to encourage people. This is an awesome place. It's out of the way. So you feel like you've gone really on vacation, and it's still accessible to a lot of things.
Right. It's not far from 74, so even if you're going to events in Indianapolis, it's maybe an hour's drive. But I know, like for the Indy 500, people end up out in Crawfordsville or even further out. It's closer than Crawfordsville. So, but yeah, and we don't live there. So that's a lot of times people say, so it's like an Airbnb? Well, yeah, but we don't live there. So you have the house, and I've got the kitchen and stuff completely stocked with all the appliances and stuff. There's some non-perishable foods. So all you got to do is bring your toothbrush, pajamas, and what you want to eat.
It's an awesome place. I can testify to that. It's an awesome place. So, yeah, and so the website for that is?
themagnoliamc.com.
Okay. The Magnolia MC. Okay, so let's go back to your photo organizing because I think this is such an awesome business that you have now. You guys have had conferences. I know you just went to the conference. Again, you got to go to Denver.
Yep.
Kind of where you wanted to live anyway. Yeah. So you got to go to Denver, and you got to really be with people this year. So tell me what's going on in that world. What are people doing? Because I think for the last 2 years, people have been cleaning out their house. They've either been moving, selling, reorganizing, throwing stuff out. What are you seeing in the world of people that are trying to organize their stuff? What's going on?
People are definitely, during the pandemic, people were like, we're going to do this. And they get started and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. And it is. Partly because there's emotion tied to it. And that's where hiring or working with a photo organizer helps, because I can understand the emotion, but I'm not tied to it like they are. So I can help guide them to get through it quicker. So I know when we're working with clients, we'll say 3-second rule of holding a picture. Think back to when you were a kid and your parents would send you in and clean your bedroom, on Saturday. And they thought it'd take half an hour, and 4 hours later you're still sitting on the floor because you found the Tinker toys that you'd lost under your bed, and you're like, oh look, I'm going to build this. And that's what happens with our photos, right? Is people find that picture and like, oh, remember, and then we did this, and oh, there was this and this, and it's like, we don't have time for that, people. We've got to get some work done. So a lot of people are doing that. But because of the overwhelmed feeling, a lot of people are just going, just throw it all away. I don't want to deal with it. And like I said, then it's gone. And this past weekend, my grandson, who's 16, was here. So it's a boy, and he's 16. And
and he was with Grandma.
And he was with Grandma. So we were doing something, and I was showing him a picture of our family when we were growing up, when his mom was little, and he's like, oh my gosh, Grandma, look, this looks just like me. I'm like, well, no, you look just like that. Yeah. But he could see the family resemblances, and he says, do you have other pictures you can show me? My heart was singing, because that's what we do, is we want to pass it on to future generations. My kids keep telling me, Mom, I don't want that stuff. So I'm not doing it for my girls. I'm doing it for my grandkids and my great-grandkids and the people coming after me, because maybe my kids don't want it, but down the road they're going to. And you can't do anything with it then. So I've been, now I've got to try to look for some of those things and put together a folder. I told them I'll send you some, more pictures and stuff. But, you know, we don't remember what was going on when we were younger. We remember little snippets, but we don't really remember all the stuff. And every single person has a different perspective. If I took a picture with my 3 girls doing something corny here at the house, every one of them is going to give me a different story, and you're like, but you were all in the same place at the same time. How do you all see it so different? And we do. And so I've had a lot of, I didn't suffer during the pandemic as far as not having work. I had taken a bunch of work in just before so I could work on things. And then people started to uncover it, and they're like, hey, can you do this? I need help with this. Do you do this? And so I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to just keep helping people with their family memories.